The diamond on my finger was catching the candlelight, a perfect symbol of the life mark and I had spent 3 years building. We were at our favorite Italian spot, celebrating our engagement, when Mark's phone buzzed on the tablecloth. I watched his smile vanish, replaced by a gray, stony mask I'd never seen before. He didn't say a word, he just turned the screen toward me. It was a Tinder profile. My face, the selfie I took at the beach last summer, stared back at me. The name was mine, the age was mine, but the bio was a nightmare. Fiancé is out of town who wants to keep me company. My heart did a slow, sickening roll in my chest. Mark, I swear on my life, I don't even have that app downloaded, I whispered, my voice trembling. But the evidence was damning. As we sat there, a message popped up at the top of the screen. Can't wait to see you again, babe. Mark stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. I thought I knew you, Elena, but I guess I was just a placeholder. He dropped the engagement ring into his wine glass and walked out into the rain. I sat there in the silence of the restaurant, the blue light of the phone burning my eyes. I looked closer at the profile picture. It was a photo I hadn't posted anywhere. It was a photo my mother had taken of me while I was trying on wedding dresses. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My mother hadn't just liked my wedding dress. She had used the moment I was most committed to a future with Mark to steal my identity and set my life on fire. The silence from Mark was louder than any screaming match we'd ever had. I spent the night outside his apartment, my forehead pressed against the cold wood of his door, begging him to just look at my phone, to see that the app wasn't there. But every time I checked the Lady Vintage profile, that mocking green, active now dot was glowing. To Mark, it was the digital smoking gun. He wasn't just hurt, he was disgusted. Through the door, I heard him throwing things into a suitcase, the muffled thuds sounding like the heartbeat of a dying relationship. I sat on the stairs, refreshing the profile like a masochist. New photos were appearing, photos from my private cloud, shots of me in my pajamas, me laughing at a brunch Mark hadn't attended. The person behind the screen was curated, clever, and cruel. They were responding to comments in real time, flirting with local guys, while my fiancé was literally erasing me from his life. Mark finally opened the door, but he didn't look at me. He looked through me. I saw you typing, Elena. I saw the dot go green while you were standing right here lying to my face. Get help. He didn't wait for a rebuttal. He walked past me, the engagement ringless hand gripping his bag so hard his knuckles were white. He was convinced I was a compulsive liar, a woman who sought the thrill of strangers while wearing his promise on my finger. As his car pulled away, the active now dot flickered again. My identity was being lived by someone else, and they were doing a better job of being me than I was. I didn't need a lawyer, I needed a confession. I drove toward my mother's house, the only person who had the passwords to my childhood and the photos to prove it. I didn't knock. I used my old spare key, the metal cold and biting in my palm. The house was unnervingly quiet, save for a soft, rhythmic giggling coming from my mother's bedroom. I crept up the stairs, my heart doing a frantic tap dance against my ribs. I expected to find a hacker, a stranger, maybe even a disgruntled ex. I didn't expect to find my mother sitting on her vanity stool, wearing my favorite silk robe, the one I'd left over last weekend, and holding her phone at a perfect selfie angle. She was bathed in the blue light of the screen, her face twisted into a youthful pout that looked grotesque on her 55-year-old features. "Oh, you're a naughty one, aren't you?" she whispered to the phone, her thumbs flying across the screen with a speed that made my stomach churn. She was wearing my engagement party earrings. She wasn't just using my pictures, she was playing dress-up with my life. I stepped into the light and she jumped, the phone clattering onto the hardwood floor. For a second the mask slipped and I saw a woman caught in a shameful, desperate act. But then, as if flipping a switch, she smiled, that wide, manic, vibrant smile that had gaslit me my entire childhood. "Elena, you're home early. I was just updating your social presence. You know how tech illiterate you can be, dear." She reached for the phone, but I was faster. I grabbed it, seeing a message from a man named Viper that made my blood turn to ice. It wasn't just flirting. She was setting up a meeting for tonight, at the same bar where Mark and I had our first date. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. "You ruined my life, Mom. Mark left me. He thinks I'm a cheat. He thinks I'm you." I expected a breakdown, a sobbing apology, maybe a plea for forgiveness. Instead, she sat back on the bed and smoothed out my silk robe with a chillingly calm hand. "Mark is a bore, Elena. He was going to make you old and gray before your time. I was doing you a favor, giving you options." Then came the reliving youth defense, the grand monologue of the invisible woman. She started crying, but the tears felt like a rehearsed performance. She told me how it felt to walk into a room and have men look through her, how the world had deleted her the moment she turned 50. "When I use your face, they see me again," she sobbed, her voice rising in a pitch of frantic delusion. "They listen to me. They tell me I'm beautiful. I thought it was harmless. I never meant to meet them." But the harmlessness ended with Viper. I scrolled through their messages and realized the tone had shifted from flirting to something much darker. He knew. He had sent a photo of my mother through her own window, taken from the bushes. He wasn't a suitor. He was a stalker who had realized Lady Vintage was a fraud. He was threatening to leak the entire chat history, including the spicy, deepfakes my mother had experimented with to my firm and to Mark, unless she paid him $10,000. My mother hadn't just stolen my face to feel young. She had invited a predator into our lives, and he was currently holding the match to my entire future. The weight of the situation finally crashed down on my mother. The vibrant facade crumbled, leaving a terrified, aging woman trembling in a stolen robe. Viper wasn't playing games. Every 5 minutes, a new notification popped up, a cropped photo of my face next to a map of my office building. He knew where I worked, he knew Mark's last name, and he knew my mother was a desperate amateur. He was a professional predator who had found the ultimate leverage. "We have to pay him, Elena," she whimpered, clutching my arm with a grip that felt like a trap. "I'll use my retirement, just make it go away." But I knew men like Viper. 10,000 was just the first installment. If we paid, we were just confirming that the secret was worth the price. My career, my reputation, and any hope of reconciling with Mark were all hanging by a digital thread. I looked at my mother, the woman who had traded my happiness for a few likes, and realized I couldn't just be the victim anymore. I took her phone and typed the first message I'd ever sent as Lady Vintage. "The money is ready. Meet me at the pier in 1 hour. Alone." My mother gasped, but I silenced her with a look. I wasn't going to pay him, and I wasn't going to hide. I called Mark. He didn't pick up, so I left a voicemail that I knew was my last shot. "Mark, if you ever loved me, go to the pier. Don't come for me. Come to see the person who's been living in my skin." I was going to unmask the blackmailer, but first, I was going to unmask the mother who had sold me out for a second chance at being 21. I can't believe the nerve. Using her own daughter's identity as a shield for a blackmailing predator. If you think the mom deserves everything that's coming to her, drop a truth HURTS in the comments. We are pushing for 1,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button for the final showdown. The confrontation at the pier didn't end in handcuffs. It ended in a long overdue moment of truth. When Viper stepped out of the shadows, he wasn't a predator. He was a private investigator Mark had hired to find out who was really behind the screen. As my mother stood there, trembling in my stolen robe, the truth finally poured out of her. It wasn't just about feeling young, it was about the paralyzing fear of being alone after my father passed. Mark saw the raw, broken humanity in her eyes, and for the first time, the anger in his face softened into understanding. He realized that while the face on the app was mine, the loneliness was hers. The transformation over the next 6 months was nothing short of a miracle. My mother started therapy to address her identity crisis, and I finally set boundaries that protected my life while supporting hers. But the real twist came from the most unexpected place. One of the men she had been chatting with, a kind, retired architect named David, hadn't cared about the young photos. He had fallen for my mother's actual personality, her wit, and her stories about our family. When she finally confessed the truth to him, expecting him to block her, he did the opposite. He sent her a bouquet of flowers with a note that read, "I'm glad I finally know who I'm actually talking to. You're much more interesting than the girl in the pictures." Seeing my mother glow with a genuine, age-appropriate love was the closure I didn't know I needed. It allowed me to let go of the resentment and see her as a woman, not just a mom. Mark and I eventually walked down that aisle, and my mother was there, not trying to steal the spotlight, but beaming with pride in her own beautiful, mature skin. As I looked at her dancing with David, I realized that the digital heist was just a desperate cry for connection. We had both reclaimed our futures, and for the first time in years, the only face I had to worry about was the one smiling back at me in the mirror.